This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here in the studio in Colorado. This week's show, we are going to bring together the series that we've been working on for about the last month or so, where we've talked about in-the-box thinking, out-of-the-box thinking, which is better, are there trade-offs, what does it really mean? Do certain ones have advantages or disadvantages? Today's show, we want to bring together all of that content and make it very practical and very easy for you to apply to your current innovation, invention, your creativity activities, the brainstorming sessions you may be hosting, whatever it is that you're trying to drive and create more and better ideas. So today's show will be about bringing that all together, combining it all up, and making it extremely practical. But before we dive in, let's take a little bit of a refresher of content that we've already covered, but I think it's good to remind ourselves what I mean when I talk about in-box thinking and out-of-the-box thinking. So, first up is out-of-the-box thinking. Now, out-of-the-box thinking is one that everybody talks about in the innovation space, the innovation game. You got to get out of the box. You got to think differently. You can't be stuck in the old ways, under the old rules. You got to try something new. You got to do it different. You got to think differently. You got to think unconventionally. You got to have a new perspective. Now, we broke this down into a two-part series. Go check that out. Going into the details of what does it really mean about thinking differently or unconventionally or coming with a different perspective. You need that to really lay this foundation. But there's this perception that innovation / creativity, inventing something, coming up with new products and services, that the only way to get there is out-of-the-box thinking. And that's kind of a metaphor that's been out there for quite some time. So let's talk about inside-the-box thinking. Now, the counterpart to this is that in the case of inside-the-box thinking, many people think of it as traditional, it's old-fashioned, it's applying the old rules, it's limiting, there's the way we've always done things, and there's this perception that you just will not come up with good ideas if you use inside-the-box thinking. Now, that is fundamentally false. That is a rule that we just need to break, or a perception that we need to change about inside-the-box thinking. This is where you can put another tool in your toolbox to come up with better ideas, is by thinking about in-the-box thinking. Now, what is it I really mean by this? Inside-the-box thinking is to innovate within the constraints defined by the box. Look, we all have constraints. We all have, rules we have to live within, right? Whether we like it or not, nobody gets a get out of jail free card and can just do whatever they want. There are constraints. If you are the chief innovation officer or the equivalent, whether to your entire organization or to your team, you're providing innovation leadership role, you have constraints. It's just the reality of the game. And constraints aren't always bad. I've talked many times in the past around constraint-based innovation. And if you can apply the right structure of constraints, it can actually be a great source of ideas. So inside the box is all about the constraints. Out of the box, it's taking all those constraints off and looking at things in a unique, different, unconventional way with different perspectives than you normally would. And so now the question gets down to is, okay, great. You've now covered inside the box, outside the box. If you haven't seen listen to the 3 shows before, go listen to that. Either wherever you get your podcast, or you can hop on over to YouTube as we're putting more and more of these more and more of these shows up on YouTube, so you can check it out there. But the question I got from emails like, okay, which one should I do? Which should you use? Should you use out of the box thinking or inside the box thinking? Which one? Which one's better? Do they apply better to different projects, etc.? The quick answer on this one is do both. Do both. Focusing on one or the other leaves you a blind spot, right? If you just do out of the box thinking, then your ideas could be forcing so much change within your organization they just will never get accepted. Inside the box thinking, you may be applying so many constraints that you just can't quite get to that what I would call game changing or breakthrough innovation. The key here is you can do both. You can do both. And in fact, I'm a big believer of combining these together, the value that get created. And in fact, I've put together a structure around this that I call box think. Now, box think is about, taking a look at, the things that allow you to get the benefit of being outside the edge of the box, inside the edge of the box, and to think just differently around the overall constraints. Now, what is it that I really mean by this box think? Well, box think uses out of the box and inside the box thinking to create a complete collection of ideas that lead to better innovations, better inventions, better ideas. So again, box think uses out of the box and inside the box thinking to create a complete collection of ideas that will lead to better innovations. Now, box think is something that, again, it's really about bringing these two elements together. It's not one is better and one is worse. You really need to have a box think type of an approach whenever you're going to be doing ideation, brainstorming, those kinds of things. If you're a new startup, you probably not have a lot of constraints, so inside the box may not be as applicable. But if you are inside of an organization, you're a chief technology officer, a head of product development, or chief innovation officer, or the person trying to come up with new products or services ideas for your team or for your organization, be careful of just picking an out-of-the-box type of strategy. Apply both out of the box and inside the box, because by doing that, you will greatly expand not only the quantity of ideas and not just the quality of the ideas, but what I call idea confidence. One of the challenges that most people have in the innovation game is you kind of go through that brainstorming activity and then you run into this, wow, have we really searched everywhere? Wow, I'm worried that there's an idea out there that we just didn't uncover. Let me run 3 brainstorming sessions and then see if there might be some more ideas that another team comes up with. That's just kind of, shotgunning. What I have experienced is that when you apply out of the box thinking and in the box thinking in a structured approach, you walk away not only with more ideas and better ideas, but you walk away with that idea confidence that you've covered, for lack of a better descriptor, the 360 degrees. So you're off looking for the really breakthrough ideas, no constraints, no handcuffs. I can go create it all. And I'm also applying some level of constraints that I have to operate in, given the organization, etc. And I get coverage on both. And by doing that, and by applying box think, then you actually walk away with a confidence level that says, look, I've looked at it from all possible directions. I've defined my problem, and I've looked in all possible directions, both in the breakthrough, breakout, break the walls of the box, to operating within the box, operating within the constraints that your organization and teams, just by nature of history, by nature of the realities of day to day, you have to operate within some constraints. You need to look at your ideas on both. So this is what we're going to talk about for the rest of today's show. I'm going to go through BoxThink, give you the actual steps to how to run your sessions, how to create your ideas, how to rank your ideas, so that you come up with a better set, a more complete collection of ideas that will lead to better innovation. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are here in the studio in northern Colorado. Today's topic, we are going to talk about BoxThink. This is the combining of inside the box and out of the box thinking to improve the quantity, quality, and overall impact of your ideas. So, how do you apply BoxThink? What is the key to BoxThink? Well, you can run it a couple different ways. One way to run it is run it with 2 ideation sessions. So an ideation session, what I call an ideation session, you're going to call a brainstorming maybe, or call it, some campaign to solicit ideas from your staff, right? So whatever term you want to use, I call it ideation. Get people together, they're going to come up with ideas, whether it's in a single meeting or they're going to do it online through some kind of submission process, or whatever method you use to solicit ideas. You can run 2 different ideation sessions. So you can run one ideation session where you focus on out of the box thinking, and then you can run a second ideation session, which is then inside the box thinking. Now, if you've been listening to me for quite some time, you know that I am a big believer that you must rank your ideas. Just running an ideation session and collecting 200 ideas on flip charts and then having someone bang it out into an email and send it around to everybody, value is 0. So I'm a big believer, big proponent that in the session itself, you should actually sit down and go through and do the ranking. So you come out with not just 200 ideas, but the top 2 or 3 ideas. So if you run one ideation session in week 1, and then week 2, you run the second ideation session, the first one being out of the box thinking, the second one being inside the box thinking. At the end of every session, you should rank. The net result is then you've got, 3 to 5 ideas from each of the 2 sessions that begin to kick off your work on looking at which of those you should take forward. Now, this is just one way to do it. You can do it as running its 2 ideation sessions, or you can run a single session with multiple teams. Now, when I do some of my workshops or I facilitate ideation activities, particularly with larger organizations, and most recently that would be U.S. Marine Corps, or it could be Brother Mobile Printing, who's somebody, company that I've been helping out with on some of their ideation and etc. In that case, we may have 25, 30 people in a room, and we'll break them down into teams of like 6 to 7. That's kind of the maximum I like to have on a team. In this case, for box thinking, then you can have one set of teams that focus on out of the box thinking, and then you can have teams focused inside the box thinking. And so therefore the teams are applying a thinking approach out of the box or inside the box to their team, and that team operates that way as you go forward. And in this case, then each of those teams are ranking their ideas as they go through their session. Then what you can also do is bring those together and rank them against each other. You can rank against them, so you come up with the best 3 or 4 ideas coming out of the entire work. So you take the ideas of inside the box and that's outside the box, you combine them up, and then you go ahead and do the ranking. So that's another way, to do it. Now, I'm going to guess that you're going to you have some questions about this approach. So let me answer some of the more common questions. So, question one, are some people more naturally in the box or out of the box thinkers? If you're assembling these teams and bringing people together, are people just more naturally thinking process being more inside the box or outside the box? Oh, I'm sure there are. There are people who fit either one of those, one of those categories. What I would warn you against, though, is thinking that if you have a team that's inside the box, that's the team you should put all of your innovation antibodies in. All those people who are the naysayers against innovation. Inside the box is not about naysaying. Inside the box is those people who can creatively think about ways to achieve success within the constraints of the organization or constraints within the industry. So do not jump to the conclusion that your inside the box team or session should be stacked up with people who are the antibodies, the innovation antibodies. If you're not familiar with what I mean by an innovation antibody, go back over to killerinnovations.com. You can search for it. There's been, I don't know, probably a dozen shows on innovation antibodies. You can also go over to beyondtheobvious.com, my book site. You can search for it there, and it'll give you the entire chapters on the innovation antibodies. So check that out. So don't fall into that trap. And I would actually, if you can identify people who are in the box and out of the box, mix them up on both teams. You don't want people that just think in their natural, comfortable way. You want to challenge them. You want to stretch people. So mix them up. If you've got people in the two camps that are naturally in the two camps, put them together and then put them on a team to do in the box or out of the box thinking. Question number two, if we do two different sessions, should it be the same team? So if you're going to do session 1 week, session 2 the second week, not necessarily. I've not been a big believer of locking into a team and letting that team always be the ones that are the go-to teams for ideation. One is you want to open it up and get the perspectives of people across your organization or across your team. If you're a small team, yeah, then fine. You can have the two teams be the same. The key always in an ideation session is you want to maximize diversity. You want the broadest possible diversity possible. That includes not just, the diversity that we typically think of from an HR perspective, but it's also, perspective of, did they go to college? Did they work their way through college? Did they come from a background of having money? Did they always live in the United States? Are they an immigrant? You want all of those diversity elements because all those perspectives hugely valuable. Question number 3: what if a team in session comes up with an idea for the opposite team? So an in the box comes up with an out of the box. That's fine. You can do two mechanisms. You can actually put that idea over to that other team or put it into that other session, or you can just keep it and just put it into the ranking process anyways. So depending on which one you want to go, either way works. Don't overthink it. You just want to get down as many ideas as possible. So with that, we're going to take another quick commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to actually give you the steps and flows of how you run your ideation sessions. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We are continuing our conversation on box think. And what do I mean by box think? Again, just to kind of as a refresh, box think uses out of the box and inside the box thinking to create a complete collection of ideas that lead to better innovations, better inventions, better overall ideas. So, how do you apply this? How do you make it happen? Step one in BoxThink is to define the problem, define the challenge statement. And I'll cover this a little bit later in today's show. I've covered it many times before. I love the Albert Einstein quote, which says, someone challenged Albert Einstein to say, if you had 1 hour to save the world, what would you do? And Albert Einstein says, if I had 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem. And then I'd spend 5 minutes solving it. We don't spend enough time identifying and really understanding the problem. So before you think about even running your ideation session, define the problem, define the challenge statement. And I've got just a quick overview of that, later in this segment. So stay tuned for that. Then the other is that you have to think about identifying the industry and company organizational constraints. You have constraints. We all have constraints that we have to operate on. And then once you've identified those constraints, then if you're out of the box thinking, you select a subset of those constraints, assume the opposite were true, and then enhance your problem statement. Add on to the end of the problem statement some out or some view of constraints that challenges the people during the ideation session to then work on the problem differently. Just like in inside the box, select a subset of the constraints and enhance it. So out of the box, take the current constraints, flip them to say if the opposite were true, and hand that to the team. Inside the box thinking, select the constraints and use it appropriately. So what do I mean by constraints? Well, if you look at some of the constraints we've had to operate on, so 1998, we were all told don't get into strangers' cars and don't meet people from the internet, right? 2016, 2020, literally we summon strangers from the internet to our house and get in their car. So what used to be a constraint of don't talk to strangers, don't get in strangers' cars, now we do it all the time with Uber and Lyft and those types of things. So you have to understand the constraints you operate on and then be able to willing to challenge those for out-of-the-box thinking or live within them within the box thinking. So the questions you ask yourself is under what assumptions or constraints does our industry operate under? What assumptions or constraints does our industry operate under? Industries operate in some form of structure. At the same time, ask yourself, what are the assumptions and constraints under which your company or your organization operates under? What are the constraints that your company operates under? And then when you think about that, under what assumptions and constraints does your organization operate under or the industry operate under? That gives you a long list, gives you a lot of things to consider. You can't consider all of the constraints, but you have to consider the ones that you may think are more meaningful. So what does that mean? Well, when you think about out of the box or challenge constraints, you got to challenge them. You got to be willing to take a look at them. So take a look at that entire long list of constraints for industry and organization and ask yourself, what if the opposite were true? Or what if that constraint isn't true at all? Or what if the barrier didn't exist anymore? And this is what you want to take a look at. So when you're assigning or you're running a session or assigning a team to be thinking about the out-of-the-box part of the box think, you want to take those constraints, identify them, and then challenge yourself to say, well, if they don't apply, if they didn't, if they weren't true, or if that barrier doesn't exist anymore, what ideas could we come up with? And you want to kind of find a way to weave that into the problem statement. If you're doing inside the box constraints, then the constraints are what constraints should be considered, right? So for instance, you may have to put a constraint into the problem statement. We need to come up with a new product aimed at creating a new game for children that are 5 to 7 years old, does not require, a computing device. And the constraint is we have to have it ready for the 2021 Christmas season. That's a constraint. That's a timing constraint. You got to have it done because that's the way your industry operates. 80% of your revenue comes in the holiday season. That's a constraint. You add that constraint, and therefore that becomes a push for that team inside the box thinking is coming up with something that has to satisfy that constraint. And then ask yourself, what if the constraint isn't true at all, right? For example, some of the unwritten rules. Every organization has unwritten rules, right? Some of those rules just been around because, we've always done it that way. Well, sometimes they don't apply. And sometimes you got to be willing, to challenge those, right? So, inside the box constraints. So now, what is step 2? Now that you've got this problem statement, defined the out of the box and inside the box. You've taken the starting problem statement, you've either added or given permission by adding text to the problem statement to make it clear to your team, right, that, in the case of inside the box, you got to have this product done because our industry makes 70% of our revenue at the Christmas season. You got to have it done by the 2021 Christmas season. That's a constraint. And out of the box, there may be some common constraint that you want to specifically call out and not make sure that nobody considers that. So once you've got the problem statement, you've got your team together, you ideate. You're cranking ideas. However you do that, Post-it notes, improv. There's all a bunch of tools you can use to ideate. Whatever tool you use to ideate. You've got your problem statement, ideate. You got out of the box pool of ideas. You have inside the box pool of ideas. And you're going to iterate. You're going to go through and maybe, try ideating against each of the constraints, either by explicitly removing that constraint or specifically telling people to operate within the constraint. So you may loop through this ideation a couple times, dealing with all the different constraints. For each of the out of the box and inside the box, then you rank. You rank the ideas. If you've got your team, if you got 2 teams and you're running the session simultaneously, at the end, take the best ideas from out of the box and inside the box, and then rank the best one across those 2 teams. So the result should be is you should come out with 2, 3, 4 ideas that are really, really good. So what do I mean by problem challenge? I'm going to give you just a quick overview on this. A problem or challenge statement is crisp and clear in defining what the problem is. There are 2 basic word structures to problem statements. The first one is defining what the problem is, who does it affect, and what's the result of this? Why is it important? Why would anybody care, right? The other one is defining the customers affected by a problem, the result of which is why is it important, right? So a problem statement could be, healthcare quality is affecting a certain segment of the population, which with the result of is increased healthcare and higher morbidity rate, right? So that's the definition, rough definition of a problem statement. Make sure that you've got a good, crisp understanding of your problem statement. So let's run through these questions really quick. These are some common ones that I get. Is there a change to how you create problems, opportunity statements with BoxThink? You do have to tweak it, either by explicitly removing the constraint or defining the constraint. Number 2, how do you handle all the constraints identified? You run through an ideation with a constraint. When you've run out of ideas, go back, grab another constraint, run the ideation session again. So you're cycling through multiple times. How many ideas should we consider taking to the next stage? How many should come out the bottom? Typically, I would say 2 to 3% of the total idea pool, right? And so if you had 300 ideas, you're probably talking 5 or 6 really good, really great ideas when you get down to the end of it. So again, remember, 2 sessions, 2 teams, inside the box, outside the box thinking. You're collecting ideas on both sides, you're ranking them, and then you rank them against each other. Result is really, really great ideas, full coverage, and the most important element of that is the confidence. So don't go anywhere. We got more to cover. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Killer Innovations. As we bring all of this together, out of the box thinking and inside the box thinking are two more tools you should have inside your toolbox. So let's walk through all of these elements and make sure that we've got it well grounded and you can apply it to your activities starting today. So, out of the box thinking, remember, it's thinking about thinking differently. It's about thinking unconventionally. It's about taking from a new perspective. All three of these elements are really the core foundation of out of the box thinking. So when you are thinking or driving teams or wanting teams to really focus on out of the box thinking, you've got to skill them. You got to show them. You got to share with them how to think differently, how to think unconventionally, how to think from a new perspective. If you don't do that and you just say go out and think out of the box, you're not going to have really a great set of results. So there's a 2-part show, so there's 2 hours of across 2 shows, so it's an hour, 2 shows, 2 hours, where we just talk about out of the box thinking to get it very practical, very how to. I would encourage you, if you've not listened to that, to go back and listen to that and share that with your team. Have your team listen or watch the YouTube videos, whatever is easiest for you to distribute that. But it is, key to sharing that from the standpoint of making sure that they are skilled up about what we think about or how you should apply out of the box thinking. It's not just this theoretical, think out of the box, but there are very practical ways to do that in order to achieve success. And then there's inside the box thinking. And inside the box thinking, you may have to get people comfortable with getting over the the myth that inside the box thinking, nothing ever good comes from it, that you can't. That's not where you should be thinking about innovation. You got to go, purely out of the box. Inside the box thinking it's about, constrain the problem, but not the potential ways to solve it. Constrain the atmosphere, but not the teams. Constrain the resources, but not the ways to utilize them, right? So it's about, we do all have to operate underneath constraints. We would all love not to have to be under any kinds of constraints, but it's just not the reality of life, particularly inside of organizations. It just doesn't work that way. And so with box think, again, the concept of box think is it uses out of the box and inside the box thinking to create complete collection of ideas that lead to better innovations. It's using both. It's not saying one is better than the other. It is about applying both box think, inside the box and outside the box, to create that complete collection of ideas that lead to better innovations, better inventions, better ingenuity to solving problems or creating opportunities for your organization. Now, we've covered this pretty quickly, in this show today. If you happen to be interested in wanting to learn more about this, hop on over to disruptiveideation.com. Disruptiveideation.com is a workshop that I teach. This is the workshop that I've been teaching to the U.S. Marine Corps, to Brother Printing, to a number of organizations around the world. I do teach this virtually. I can do it, in person at your location with your teams, if that's what you want. The team at the Innovators Network is also available to teach these workshops. We can also, if you so desire, you can become trained and you can teach the workshop. You can do a train the trainer and you can teach it within your own organization. Or if you are an innovation consultant and you're looking for new capabilities, new skills to put in your toolkit as you go out and teach your own innovation capabilities or to advise clients or whatever, you can become certified, and then you can take the Disruptive Ideation Workshop to your clients and teach them accordingly. So go over to disruptiveideation.com, click on the button there. You can, let the team know that you're interested in the workshop. Let them know whether you want it just for your organization or if you're interested to become a trainer and actually teach the workshop to your clients, or if you're inside of a large organization and you want to roll it out and use it. Now, disruptive ideation is much more than box think. It includes how to run workshops, how to facilitate, but more importantly, what's unique about this workshop is not only do we give the teams the the skills and the steps and how to do it, but we actually take on a problem statement that's meaningful to the organization. The end result is not only, teams that are now able to take the basic tools and apply it to their organizations day one right after the workshop, but you also walk out with a starter funnel of ideas and innovations that you can immediately apply. So again, hop on over to disruptiveideation.com and click on the button and let us know. With that, we're going to wrap up today's show. For more information, you can email me at phil@killerinnovations.com. The blog, I do writing, essays, thoughts over at philmckinney.com. philmckinney.com is also where the show for 5 Minutes to New Ideas gets posted. So you want to hop over there, check that out. The Innovators Network also has a large number of other shows, so you can go over to theinnovators.network and see other shows like Tech Pinions and others. Show notes will be over at killerinnovations.com. If you want to get connected, if you're not already a subscriber, you're not already getting the weekly innovation newsletter from me, just text the word innovation to 44222. That's if you're in the United States, 44222. If you're outside the United States, just send an email to innovation@killerinnovations.com. That'll put you on the innovation newsletter, and you'll get that newsletter just keeping you up to date on the latest thinking, latest trends, latest tools. And with that, thank you very much for taking the busy time out of your schedule. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.